Hey, hello. Hello, my lovelies. So great to have you here today. Oh my goodness, there's so many of you already. Oh, yay. Charisse and Shelly and S. I feel like I've seen those initials before and I don't remember what the first name is that goes with that. I'm happy to have you here. Subita, I've not seen your name before. I'm happy that you're here as well. Hey, Shelly. Nice to see you. Hey. Oh my goodness. It's one of my most fun things to do to talk with you guys on Tuesdays. So welcome. Warm welcome to everyone. I'm so glad you're here. It's okay if you're off camera. You can stay off camera. You can come on camera. You can talk and play with me if you want to. I'm either way, I'm happy that you're here. And I'm super grateful that so many of you told me that that these training Tuesdays were valuable to you and that you wanted them back. So thanks for sharing all that feedback with me. And I'm happy that we're here. It's like a perfect time of year, to meet with your posse for the busiest month of the year, typically, right? We're all really busy this time of year. So I'm delighted that you're here. And hey, Charisse, it's nice to see you. Hello, hello. Hi. So today, I wanted to share with you something that I was asked to share in another group, and that is using the Venn diagram or using a Venn diagram to source, meaning to find the source, find the genesis of what's causing the discomfort or the pain or the dysfunction, mechanical dysfunction with our clients. So I'm not sure how many of you have used a Venn diagram before. Does this feel familiar to you? Or are you like, I have no idea what you're talking about, Gina, but I'm here for it. Anybody use a Venn diagram before on pain? No. Oh, good. Okay, this is going to be super fun. So I've actually used this before in training. I use it a lot in our mastery program. So my mastery practitioners are super familiar with it. And like I said, I was asked to share it with a different group. And then I thought, wait a minute, what about my practitioners on Tuesdays? We get to talk about this too. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And for those of you who are here for the first time, so glad you're here. For those of you who are here for the 100th time, so glad you're here. Thanks for being here. If you haven't yet met me, brief intro, I'm Gina Schatz, and I developed the Schatz method. I'm both a movement and a manual practitioner. Started as a movement person, then as a manual practitioner, then as a movement practitioner. I was looking for the answer, like we all are, like looking for the answer for all of our clients. And along the way, I developed the method of the Schatz method. So that's super fun and exciting. And now I teach that to other practitioners as well in a year-long program. What we do here on Tuesdays is take a tiny nugget, like a bite size, if you will, of what can we do to up our skill and maybe look at things differently and really get to the source of the problem. Because I, like you, like to be in service. I like to do really good quality work. And one of the things that I found as both a manual and a movement practitioner is that my clients, for a period of time, who were really loyal and devoted and like they were coming regularly and they just sung my praises, really what was happening, if I was honest, is that they were having a little bit of rinse and repeat. They were having a little bit of Groundhog's Day. They'd feel better while they were with me and for a little bit later, and then they'd come back with the same problem. And while I loved their devotion and their loyalty, I was getting kind of bored with that. And I was also questioning whether or not I knew what I was doing, because if you can't get rid of the pain and you could just sort of cover the pain for a little while or make it go away, but not permanently, I was feeling like a fraud. So that's what got me into really looking for this answer that I now call the Schatz method. So today, what I want to share with you is one of those tools that I use to sort of pinpoint, like, where do I need to go in my treatment plan with my person? And the best way for me to describe it to you is a Venn diagram, which I'm hearing is new for you guys, which is great. So a Venn diagram is not something that I created. A Venn diagram is actually a tool that can be used anywhere in any field at any time. It's basically a design style that shows a logical relation between several different parts. So a Venn diagram can be large, it can be small. It's kind of like this just came to mind for me. If you think about a marriage, right? There's a husband and a wife, or there's two spouses. And so those are two individual parts, and there's a relationship between them that is the marriage. So if you take those two individual parts, the spouse A and spouse B, and their two circles, let's call it, and then you find the commonality between them or the relationship between them, that in between them has another life force energy to it, if you will. So I'm going to show you, actually, I'm going to give you a real picture. I have a slide. I've never done slides on Training Tuesdays before, but I'm going to share it with you today because I think it really works. And I want you to have a clear picture of what we're talking about, so that when we start plugging in these pieces and talking about what it might be, you have a picture in your mind of what we're going for. Otherwise, it's just going to start sounding like I'm Charlie Brown and you're not going to quite get what I'm saying. So let me just pull up this.
I'm going to show you, actually. I'm going to give you a real picture.
Okay. I don't know if you guys can hear when that happens. When YouTube plays my video back at me, it's always fun. So, okay, great. So screen share has stopped because I clicked too many buttons. Okay, give me one more second. That's what happens when we go live. Oh, okay, awesome. I closed the whole screen. Okay, great. So I'm going to just chat a little bit and get the screen back because I really did close all the screens. So I hope that you didn't hear YouTube playing it back at us, because sometimes it does when I switch screens and do a screen share. And as you can tell, this is live. This is not pre-recorded or anything. That's why I'm blubbering about as we go. But I got the slide and I'm going to get it back. And I'm going to show you this visual of the Venn diagram that I use and have taught with before. So I'm almost there. Thanks for hanging on and being patient. And I can sometimes multitask, but if I'm honest with you, I got to kind of focus on what I'm doing. So here we go. Here we go. It's coming. It's so close. All right, I've got it. Okay, I'm back to you guys. Oh, and I got a love letter while I was waiting. It did play back, but we're okay with that. Oh, that's super sweet of you. Thank you. I never know if it's picking up the sound or not. And I'm sure that was a little distracting. It was distracting to me. It felt very loud hearing 2 seconds ago of me speaking. Okay, anyway, here we go. Back to the shared slide. How about that? Can you guys see the slide? Somebody give me a confirmation. Can you see the shared slide? Yes. Okay, great. Thank you for that. Awesome. Okay. So this is one of the slides that I've used in training before. As you can see it up at the top, it says level 2 practitioner mastery. So we've used this literally in our training program before. Just continue holding your heart. Thank you so much for that. It's so sweet. So we've used this slide before. And this is a version of a Venn diagram. Now, they don't have to be colored. They don't have to necessarily have 3 circles. They can have, like I said, in the example I gave before of the marriage, it can be 2 parts to it. There can be several parts to it. But here's what I want to draw your attention to. So can you guys see my cursor? Can you see this cursor? Oh, yes. Okay, awesome. Sharice, I appreciate you following through and being present with me. I really appreciate that a lot. Okay, so this is one circle here, right? That we can see the peachish color, let's call it. And then the yellow circle over here. Okay, awesome. Now, when these 2 circles come together, they make orange. Okay, just like we did with the 2 spouses and then coming together. If there were only 2 circles in this Venn diagram, the crossover in the middle would be the 3rd entity, and that would be orange. What we're going to talk about today, what I want to share with you today is 3 circles. So we're going to add the blue one in. And when that crosses over with the other 2, now when the blue crosses over with the, let's call it pink now that I'm seeing it's purple, it creates a purple color. And when the blue crosses over with the yellow, it creates a green. And when all of them cross over, now we have the one in the center. Is that making sense? You guys getting that as far as like how a Venn diagram rolls out? Okay, great. So if we plug in the 3 parts that I want to share with you, physical, emotional, and mental, as the source, the genesis of a client's pain or dysfunction, then we have a few different places to look and where they cross over. And the idea is that every person, as I work with them clinically, is a whole person, and they always have these 3 parts. So there's always the physical structure, right? There's our knee joint and our hip joint and our back and our spine and all that thing. There's our mental and how we think about our pain or how we think about movement and how we think about our previous injuries and our health history. And then there's the emotional or energetic component of that as well. How we feel about what we think, how we feel about our spine, our body, our size, our aging, any part of how we feel about our structure. So if I look at the Venn diagram again, here's my physical, right? Here's my relationship to my spine health and my knee replacement and my foot pain, okay? How I feel about that. I'm getting older. Oh, I have arthritis. It's hereditary. It runs in my family. There's a crossover between those two. So if I'm navigating someone's back or hip pain up here as a physical manual practitioner, but they have a strong emotional connection to the fact that they're never going to really ultimately be out of pain because their feeling about aging is stronger than the reality that we can actually navigate some mobility for them, that I'm actually navigating here in the green with them. Now, what I'm not saying is that we all get to become armchair psychologists. In fact, quite the opposite, right? We get to stay in our lane and do our skill and stay legal and ethical and all the things. But I'm going to share with you some examples as we move through this Venn diagram of when I have legitimately needed to refer out, and knowing where to refer them to is still being in service. Just saying, I can't help you, leaves the client feeling like they can't be helped, instead of it's just not my lane, but somebody else does drive in that lane. Please go see this practitioner. And the other part that's not really great is the part that I was sharing with you earlier, which is how I started recognizing that I was making headway with clients, but they would return. And if I was honest, they were returning with very similar symptoms than they came to me in the first place. And when they return with similar symptoms, we didn't actually get to the root of the problem. We just offered some comfort in the meantime. And I ethically don't believe that that's a great way to work. I love that I can take some of the edge off for folks, but my goal always is to get to the source of it and to resolve it. So I want to resolve it. I don't want them to keep coming back and wasting their time or money thinking that they're going to get to here when really all I've done is take them out of here, but actually they're still in here, for example. Okay. The other way it works is mental, right? So the way, so I've had conversations before with folks who've said, well, isn't mental and energy, and you have energetic with emotional? And the answer to that both is yes, 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 of course. And we can make this Venn diagram much bigger because, of course, we're, multiple dimensions to each human being. For ease and simplicity, I keep it to 3 so that I can keep clear when I'm working with someone. And my experience is that a mental energy is different than an emotional energy. A mental energy is like electrical. Like think about if we're talking about energy, that mental energy is electrical. It's sharp, it's sparky, it moves fast. Typically, when clients show up with a mental energy, they are disconnected from their body, right? We've talked about this a lot in our industry, mind-body connection, right? That's a legit thing to create a mind-body connection. And when clients are very mental energy centric, they tend to have a disconnected feeling with their body. So those are the clients that would show up, and when we'd say, so where do you feel the pain? And they can't quite describe it. Or do you feel what I'm doing to you? Kind of. Or you have them go into a movement pattern or practice. How does that feel? It's okay, right? So they're generally mentally, energetically sparking instead of feeling down in here, which could, by the way, create a Venn diagram relationship here, where they're not in comfort spaces around their emotional state. So they stay up in their head, which doesn't create wholeness for them. And then eventually it can show up like a physical problem, right? Because that's the key here. Any one of these circles in the Venn diagram can be the source, and they share a relationship between them, which means that at any given time, we could be treating something that's physical that isn't actually the genesis of the problem, which turns out to be how I was working in the past, where we can create some remedy for a while, but not actually resolve the problem. So we're taking the edge off a little bit of this relationship between these two places in the Venn diagram. Emotional energy, the energy of emotion, if you will, I experience that more as water, right? So for those of you who study chakras, you know that the second chakra is all about water and fluids and its emotional base. And water, as we know, can either be still and frozen, like an ice cube, or it can be raging, like Niagara Falls, right? And very powerful in its way. So emotional energy has a wide spectrum of flow, if you will, and that can show up as wide-ranging symptoms too, or wide-ranging relationship to symptoms or resolving the symptoms, right? So like I said a few moments ago, if someone has a very deep emotional connection to the why that they're not going to resolve their pain, then I'm working with something as powerful as Niagara Falls, even though I know that I've got great hands and great skill set for manual and movement practices. It's not like an arm wrestle, but it energetically, it can feel like that, right? Structurally or physically, that type of energy, when there's a strong physical genesis of the problem that someone comes to us with, wood is a structure, right? So I tend to think of like the structural part as like a wood energy. For those of you who study traditional Chinese medicine, these elements might draw some correlation for you. They do for me. And if not, that's okay as well. But think about structure like a tree, right? A tree is a structure, or the frame of a house, a wood frame of a house. Wood can be it is very sturdy, right? And it can hold a lot of weight. And when you rub two pieces of wood together, there's friction there, which can cause fire, another element altogether. And so I think of physical pain showing up like that. It can be very sturdy. And so I can work with the energy of the structure and push back and get feedback from the body. If it's physical, the body will give me feedback. And if the structure is rubbing in a place, meaning it's out of alignment, it's creating heat and pain. And so if I just take the structures away from each other that aren't meant to be rubbing, the heat goes away, and now we've resolved the problem, the pain or discomfort. So that's how I use, this is kind of brief, but that's how I use this Venn diagram to decide, like, where am I working and what parts of the whole person are present when someone comes in with pain and dysfunction. And I want to just repeat what I said earlier, that all of us, in my belief, the way I work with people, all of us have all three all the time. But when we're talking about why clients come to us for a solution, what we want to discern is which part of the Venn diagram is the source or the cause of the problem. And then go there. And if it's in our lane, like structural, physical is in my lane, great. But if I can recognize that it's emotional and that's not in my lane, then I would be in service. I am in service when I recommend to my client that they go have that sorted out with a different practitioner. Now, all the rules apply that we've talked about and been taught. You never tell someone, I think you have blah, 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 whether it's a physical diagnosis or an emotional diagnosis or a mental diagnosis. Never do that. Not only is it not ethical, it's rude, right? And so I don't recommend that. What I'm recommending is that we talk openly with our client and ask more questions than state more facts about your perceived diagnosis of them. Okay, and let me give you some examples of that. I'm going to stop sharing just so that I can see all of you who are on camera, which is awesome. How is this landing, by the way? Is this resonating as something valuable to you? Is this jiving? Sharice, is this jiving for you? Shelly, I saw you nod. Yeah. Got it.
I find that a lot of it is what I run into, but a lot of times they start expressing the emotional component that's involved with it. It just kind of comes out when you're working with them.
Yeah. which is great, right? Because that means they're fully present and available. And so they can resolve their own imbalance Venn diagram in your presence, which is always a treat for everybody involved, for sure. So I love that you've seen it. The emphasis I want to put on our Venn diagram today is when that doesn't happen, right? When they're not resolving their wholeness in our presence, that our one modality or a couple modalities, whatever it is that we're doing, isn't moving the needle, right? So let me give you an example of that. So I'm glad that it's landing, and let me give you an example of when it doesn't work, and when my modality doesn't work, and the Venn diagram becomes a tool that I can really continue to serve someone with. So recently I had a client with frozen shoulder. Frozen shoulder is a big deal. Those of us who navigate frozen shoulders, I'm sure you have technique after technique, and probably 50% or more of them you've been able to create a resolution for your clients. Amazing, me too. So I'm not here to say how to get rid of frozen shoulder at all. What I'm emphasizing here is that on this particular client that I'm going to use as an example for why and when to use the Venn diagram, I couldn't get the shoulder to resolve. And I have, like you, resolved frozen shoulders in the past. This one wasn't budging. And we're talking over 3 sessions. And personally, I know that the results that I get with the tool that I have with my method, that if someone comes to me with a specific problem within 3 sessions, they're mostly done. And if 4 sessions, it's not resolved, I'm not their girl. And I tell them that at the beginning. So I'm not a one and done, but I want the resolution and then come back to me for something else as life's with your body. But I don't want to keep repeating the same thing for 6 months, because that's not a way to live. And I don't want to work like that. So I was on session 3 with this client, and this frozen shoulder, with all of my technique, with all of my skill, with all of my experience of knowing how to resolve it, wasn't even moving the needle. It's not like it was moving it and bouncing back. It was not budging. So of course I start thinking, well, maybe it's not structural then, because I'm in the structural part of the Venn diagram and I'm loaded with tools over there because that's my lane, and it wasn't moving the needle. So maybe with this particular frozen shoulder, it wasn't a structural source showing up physically, but not the source of it, which is why physically wasn't really getting a resolution, wasn't doing anything. And I said exactly that to my client. What I didn't say was, oh, I think you have an emotional problem. And what I didn't say was, oh my God, I think there's something terribly wrong. You should go see a doctor. I didn't say any of that. What I said was, here's the Venn diagram. And I literally draw that Venn diagram. Not as beautifully as the slides, but I take pen and paper in my client chart and I write it out and I show them. And I tell them much more succinctly. I don't spend 20 minutes of it with them, because they're in a session with me that's timed, but I will give them a very brief overview. And just like you said, Charisse, their intuition is so strong. And if they're fully connected to a resolution, they'll point at the Venn diagram and go, I think it's that. And that's perfect. I'm like, great. That's awesome that we know that. That's not my lane, but I have a practitioner that I'm in a network with, and I'm happy to give you a referral if you don't have one of your own. Because I think if you go get that part of the Venn diagram navigated and you come back to me, we'll get your shoulder to move. That's the way to navigate it, right? Because they know that they're whole and they know that we're still looking at them in that way. Another reason why that's really important is the second example that I'll give you. I had a client years and years and years ago, probably when I was like coming up with this Venn diagram, actually. Sweetest person. I mean, all of them are great, right? Like all the clients that we share our success stories with and our heart with, they're always like these really special people, right? And this client was no exception. And she had the tiniest spot, like the size of the diameter of her index finger, excruciating pain in her rib. And I'm failing to remember what side of the rib cage it was, if it was left or right. It's 50-50 chance, but it was on one specific side of her ribs and it never moved to the other side. And so right away, I'm in the physical part of the Venn diagram, and right away I'm thinking intercostals, right? Because those are the muscles that are there. And if you break a rib or strain a muscle and you continue to breathe and it has a longer time to heal, that's why broken ribs are so painful, because you have to keep breathing. And those intercostals are like a basket weave, and that can create a lot of discomfort. I know all this, right? So she comes to me with this pain, and it's very specific, which is a question mark on its own when it comes to physical pain, if it's the source, because typically physical pain will refer to somewhere else, right? We know that at least 80% of pain in the body that's physical is referred from somewhere else. If we use that same math equation, though, on this Venn diagram, 80% of all pain is referred from somewhere else, which means that physical spot might not have even been physical. It might have been referred from some other part of the Venn diagram. Okay, so as we're navigating through her history, and again, nothing's moving, nothing is shifting for her, no matter what I do, manual or movement related, and we're navigating through more of her history, she's been to multiple doctors. She's been to an orthopedic specialist. She's been to a psychotherapist. She's been to an energy Reiki practitioner. She's been through the gamut, and it's been years. It's been years. She then told me that the pain was, did not change. Pain did not change when she got pregnant with her third child. And then I'm remembering that on her initial intake, she has 2 children. So the pain didn't shift when she was pregnant with her third child, but she only has 2 children that she's called by name. And I said that to her. I said, am I forgetting something? I feel like your children's names are A and B. And then the floodgates opened, and she shared with me that her second child died at the age of 2. And there was all kinds of complications that came with that child's passing. And there was a whole bunch of guilt that came with getting pregnant for the third time. And the energy that was locked in her ribs, that the energy practitioner thought they were moving, had a lot to do with her grief that she was storing from losing her child, and then feeling like she couldn't really express that without guilt, because she has a third child now that wasn't even alive when the second child had passed. So she was really in this cage of her own making, she said. Because the rib cage is a cage. And the left side of the body is sadness, and the right side of the body is anger. And the left side of the body has to do with our feminine and female relationships, which was her third child. And the right side of our body has to do with male and our masculinity and male relationships. And her second child was a boy who had passed. So again, I'm not remembering which side of the rib cage it was, whether it was right or left, but these 2 children were very wrapped up in this energy that she had lodged in her ribs, in her cage, that she felt, the cage of her own making. And all of a sudden it clicked. It doesn't matter what I do to the intercostals. It's not actually coming from those muscles. It's something else. And so we ended up partnering with energy work and a different type of mental health practitioner. By the way, her mental health practitioner told her that she was grieving and offered her antidepressants just to subdue all that and not actually work it out of her tissues. But her tissues were telling her that there was more to go for her energetically, emotionally, in this life event that she had experienced, so that she could be fully present for her living children. And so notice that when we have that much physical pain, it takes us out of the present moment. Right? I mean, it just does. We think, oh my gosh, this is how the story ends. And we're on the couch and we can't really engage with life. So having debilitating pain of any kind takes us out of the present. So another reason why I could tell that this was not a physical source. It was a protective mechanism for her to, not get as close to her third child for fear of losing her child. It was, as you can imagine, it was a very complex storyline for her. So again, I'm sharing this with you to identify for you and for your clients that sometimes the physical pain is not from a physical source. And I see sometimes practitioners losing their confidence if they think that their skill just isn't good enough. And I see the opposite side of it too, where some practitioners can forget to stay in their own lane and become a bit arrogant about throwing out diagnoses that are not ours to give. So I think if we stick with the Venn diagram and we know that we're dealing with a whole person in front of us and take the arrogance out and just be really present with what the body is sharing, we can help interpret what the body is sharing to our clients. And they're ultimately the ones that know, right? It lands with them when it's right. And if we can open up a blind spot for them, we've already been in service. Even if that means the client's leaving and they're going somewhere else, that still means that we're doing service and we're, leading with our heart and being really ethical in the process. So that's what I wanted to share with you about the Venn diagram and how I use it and how I really feel it's an important tool to get to the source of a problem so that we can ultimately be in service. And I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear if you have any questions for me about the Venn diagram or any questions about a particular client or something else other than the Venn diagram. Yeah, Sharice, what's up?
What I find when people are emotional or have emotional issues going on, it's almost shamanic to work with them and work through it. But what really I find is the biggest block is when they have these beliefs. My parent, so-and-so at this certain age developed this or whatever, and it seems to run in the family, or they just believe at a certain point in time that this is just something that's going to happen. That's just an area that I haven't connected with any psychological practitioners to help work with somebody on that level. And well, actually, I just ended up having a meet with someone who does that.
Awesome.
So it's how do you go about recommending someone see a practitioner in that area when they have these really strong beliefs? It holds on to all that pain.
Right. Yeah, such a good question, right? Well, I think the first step is the one that you're doing, which is recognizing that it's a mental source that's blocking them from a physical resolution, which is literally the topic that we talked about today. So that's the first step, and it's the most important because that means that you can see something on behalf of your client, and that's what they're relying on us for, especially if they know, like, and trust us. And I love that you're in question about, well, how do I navigate that? Because it means that you haven't been, overbearing to them, which is, of course, a way that we can lose their trust. So I go about it a couple ways. Which is the question that you asked. And the first way is to have somebody in your network that you also know, like, and trust. Because if your clients know, like, and trust you, when you refer them to someone else, they will go just based on your recommendation. So I vet the people that I'm in community with. My network of practitioners is strongly vetted. I literally go to every one of them without even telling them what I do for a living, just for a personal session. And then I share with them what I do for a living and see what their response is to that. And then I talk about how would they go about a collaboration. Not that nobody gets kickbacks from anybody else. That's illegal and unethical. But I'm meaning, like, do they take referrals from me? And how would they navigate it if there was a client who sometimes, as you know, they want me to be involved in whatever's going on over there. And even though that's not my lane, but I'm the one that they've developed the know, like, and trust with. And so they want to stay connected in that way. And of course, you go through all the right HIPAA compliance and, have them put it in writing and such. But I asked the network, the practitioner in my network, how do you navigate collaborations like that and referrals back and forth? And also, how did they navigate HIPAA? Because I've been in a massage therapist setting just recently. And as I was checking out and I had referred several clients to her, she started telling me about the work she did with one of my clients in their previous session. And I was like, oh no, what the frig? Stop it. So that doesn't work for me because my privacy with my clients is of utmost importance. So I do all that vetting with another practitioner first. So now I feel like I know, like, and trust them. I know what they do. I know how they do it. I know how they'll treat my people who are not my people when they're over there, like we're sharing. So I just get really clear on all of that so that I can comfortably and confidently refer out. And then what I do with clients is, as I mentioned to you about the frozen shoulder client, I draw the Venn diagram. And I let them know, I'm working on this wholeness part in the middle. This is where I want you. And I'm over here. This is my lane in the physical. And so how much of these other two do you see as showing up for you? And if they're honest, they'll say, oh, it's that one. Like I said, with the frozen shoulder client. And if they're really in resistance about it and they're like, nothing, it's nothing, I don't, well, then they're in resistance. And so I don't arm wrestle them physically or energetically. I'll ask them, are you open to another idea? Are you open to another idea? And if the answer is sort of gruff and dismissive, then I know that they're not. And truthfully, Charisse, they're not my client, because I work with the Venn diagram, and I'm not confrontational in any way, but I'm really clear and I'm really direct. The same way I talk to you guys is the way I talk to my clients, and they know, like, and trust that. So my clients tend to be open to a direct, let's think about this. How does that resonate with you? And when that happens, I'll let them know a few things. I get it that your thoughts and are telling you a belief as if it's fact. I get it. I have had my own that I've had to navigate through. And what I know about anatomy and physiology is that genes do not have to express themselves, or I would have blue eyes right now, and I don't. And then they're like, huh. Of course, after they've said yes, they're open to a new idea. And then I give them facts about anatomy. I stay in my lane. I'm still in the physical side of the Venn diagram as I'm appealing to them about another side of the Venn diagram. So I teach anatomy and physiology for a living. I can talk to them about anatomy and give them a different fact that butts up against their belief system that they've identified or they've adopted as a fact. It's not, it's an idea. So I give them a fact, which challenges their belief. And now they're recognizing, oh, I'm over here in the mental part of the Venn diagram, sort of tiptoeing and spinning and questioning. Great. Okay, great. You want to keep going? And if they slip back or they recognize that they need support, great. I have a practitioner in my network who does exactly that. In fact, I've gone to her because, again, I vet all my people in my network. I've gone to her, and I had a belief that told me X, Y, and Z, brief, don't get into your own stuff. Don't take the focus off of your client. But I had a belief that also told me I was never going to have love or money or a house of my own or whatever I was working on at the time. And I found out it was rooted in something that I thought was true. It wasn't true. And she really supported me. It took like 3 sessions, but I got there. Do you want her number? Yeah, I'll try it. Great. Here you go. So now for today, and I go back to, this is what we're doing for us today. In the time that we have, knowing what we know, this is what I can do for you. Does that support you, Charisse?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
You know, it helps a lot.
Okay, great. Good, good. All right. Any other questions? Anything about the Venn diagram? Any client stuff? Any anatomy stuff? You know, I love that. You can always rule me into an anatomy talk pretty quick. Anybody in the chat? I know there's several of you here not on camera, which is okay. You can always post your questions in the chat. Okay. Well, that's all right. I'm here if you change your mind. Couple things I want to share with you before we wrap up for today. Speaking of, actually, Therese, speaking of practitioners in the mental quadrant of our, well, it's not a quadrant, mental third of the Venn diagram, one of the practitioners that I do refer to frequently, who does neuro-emotional techniques. So she's a licensed mental health practitioner, and she does energy work. So how cool is that, right? So she's got her own Venn diagram. She and I are co-hosting a workshop tomorrow, Wednesday. Today's Tuesday, right? Yeah, tomorrow. And it's complimentary. So you guys are welcome to come to that if you'd like to. It was in the newsletter that I sent out today, and I can also put some links together for you in the chat if you don't have those links, but you're more than welcome to come and meet her and get some good mental juice for yourself. So it's complimentary. It's from 1 to 3 Eastern. So we'll be doing that tomorrow. And then next week in Training Tuesday for practitioners, I'm going to talk about hypermobility. So I also put that in yesterday's newsletter about hypermobility in the knees and what that can do for hip function. So I kind of left you guys with, so what does this mean for you in hip function at the end of that newsletter blurb? And we're going to talk that out. So I'll give you guys a week to think about that. And we'll talk about that in a little bit more depth next week. We can talk about hypermobility for a really long time. I was just sharing this with one of my mastery practitioners who's a movement person, who she does Pilates. She's an excellent practitioner. And most of massage therapists who have discomfort in their own bodies, and yoga teachers and Pilates instructors, most of us are interfacing with hypermobility more than the other two constitutions, the other two mobility constitutions. And I think it's because people who are hypermobile tend to gravitate towards what they like, which is stretching and lengthening, in the same way that hypomobile people gravitate towards what they like. They do CrossFit. So yoga teachers and Pilates teachers wouldn't necessarily interface with that type of constitution, stereotypically speaking, because constitutions tend to drift towards what they like instead of what they need, which is the opposite, the balance part of it. So we're going to talk about hypermobility next week specifically. And if you would like to talk about the other constitutions as well, drop me a note and let me know that. So I have today's topic covered and next week's topic covered. And then for the next few weeks of December, I'd love to hear from you. What do you want me to talk about? What would you like more training on? Please feel free to either tell me now, put it in the chat, drop me an email, send me smoke signals, although I don't read them very well, but tell me what would serve you, because I could talk about anything and I want it to be something that would really work for you and support you, especially as we're in our busiest month as practitioners. Okay, any ideas come up for you now while we're here? Shelly, you're muted. I'd love to hear. I think it's on the bottom right, if you're on a cell phone or a pad. Bottom left, excuse me. Your mute button's typically on the bottom left. It's either right or left. It's on the bottom. There we go.
So I was just saying, I'll think about it. I don't have anything that comes to mind right now.
Okay, awesome. Well, if you
I'll be
guys
here next week, though.
say it again.
I'll be here next week, and if I think of something, I'll write it down and let you know.
Okay, perfect. Well, I'm super glad to know that you're already going to be here next week. I will be here too. And yeah, you guys let me know if there is a topic. You know, I can fill the space. So I have no problem coming up with a topic and talking. I just would really love to give you something that, you know, that is timely for you, that you're thinking about right now. Okay, any other questions before we wrap up for today? Questions, thoughts, concerns, client questions, anatomy questions, training questions, all the things. All right, my loves. Well, thanks for being here today. I had so much fun. I love meeting with you. Thank you for being here. Please come next week, invite your buddies. Everybody's welcome. You don't have to be on camera, but of course, when you are, we get to interface. So Sharice and Shelly, thank you for being on camera and interacting with me. I love when I know that I'm talking directly to a person. So it matters to me a lot. All right, loves, wishing you a great week. I'll see you next Tuesday.
All right, see you then.
Okay, bye for now.